Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This virus, as we all know, is putting a strain on all of us.
BC's deadliest day, a single-day high for COVID-19 deaths. Also,
when I go in the home every day, I am scared.
Demanding a lockdown as Fraser Health drives BC's caseload, community leaders call for stricter measures. And
relief to be bringing him out of here, bittersweet day, bringing him home without his mom.
with his mother on life support battling COVID-19, a baby boy heads home with dad.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. It is the darkest day yet in BC's pandemic.
As the case count continues to mount, the province tallies its worst single-day death toll so far. 13 people dying since yesterday's update, bringing the total to 371. Hospitalizations are also at an all-time high, now sitting at 294, 61 of those patients in critical care. Across BC, there are now more than 7,800 active cases.
Over 10,200 people are being monitored at the moment. Dr. Bonnie Henry and the provincial government are reporting 738 new cases in total. Nearly 60% of the confirmed cases of COVID-19 in BC today are again in the Fraser Health region.
As Sarah Premji explains, some people living and working in that region say the province needs to crack down and lock down now.
We live in fear right now.
As numbers only climb in the Fraser Health region, many are asking for another big step, one with a big economic impact, but one many feel is their last option.
I really would like to see a lockdown happen.
I would like to see a lockdown here.
I think in these days, only solution is the lockdown.
But Dr. Bonnie Henry says no, the focus will continue to be keeping as many workplaces and schools open as possible.
We are looking at every option that we have. We've never had a lockdown in that sense here in British Columbia. We are going through all of the options over the next 10 days to 2 weeks.
Henry adds they'll know if more measures are needed when the current health orders end on December 7th. But without a full lockdown, Narinder Singh argues the community is suffering.
Every day, I am scared.
Living with his 100-year-old father, 95-year-old mother, and his school-age kids means a difficult daily gamble.
13-year, my son, he have a strong immune system. What about my 100-year father and my 95-year my mother? They have no strong immune system.
While he supports some first steps to help people living in Fraser Health, it's not enough for him. Staff at Nana's Kitchen in Surrey agree, claiming the health authorities and the BC government haven't been clear enough.
What if somebody does test positive? What are we supposed to do? Have some actual guidelines from Fraser Health that's more clear for businesses versus what you do personally.
In another Surrey neighborhood, a company feels trapped on a double-edged sword. They want a short lockdown even though their business is already suffering.
We all are small business, and specifically if we don't get clients, potentially it would impact our business, and obviously we have to shut down or close.
Until the results of the latest health orders come in, people in Fraser Health are encouraging their neighbors and beyond to obey the orders and stop the spread. Zara Premji, CBC News, Surrey.
An update now on a story we brought you last week, and it's a bit of good news. An Abbotsford infant is home tonight after being released from hospital.
It's a relief to be bringing him out of here, bittersweet day, bringing him home without his mom. But yeah, we're glad he's healthy and able to come home with us now.
Jill McIntosh is still in an induced coma and on a ventilator due to complications from COVID-19. A few weeks ago, the 37-year-old pregnant mom was feeling unwell and took herself to the hospital, but she took a turn for the worse and had to undergo an emergency C-section 10 days ago. It's still not clear how McIntosh contracted the virus.
A new study by the BC Women's Health Foundation finds females have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. The research reveals women generally work in environments with a higher risk of exposure. Since the beginning of the pandemic in March, women lost 60% more jobs than men. Here in BC, 53% of women work in the 4 sectors that have put workers at greatest exposure with the public. That's retail, healthcare, education, as well as accommodation and food services. The report's authors say there needs to be a specific focus on women's health and the toll the pandemic is taking on them in particular.
During her COVID-19 update today, Dr. Bonnie Henry announced corrections on new case numbers being reported over the past week. Our Justin McElroy has been looking at those. He joins us now with more on that. So, Justin, what does this mean for the total case count?
Yeah, Mike, it means that total case count overall in British Columbia was actually a little bit higher over the past week. But when you look at the adjustments made, and these were all in Fraser Health, to the overall daily caseload, we've been actually seeing a little bit of a plateau happening. If you take a look at this chart right here that shows daily new cases that have been adjusted now, along with hospitalizations and deaths, you can see that you take out yesterday's number that was originally in the 900s, it was actually much lower than that. And you can see that while cases have been going up slightly, it's much less than the previous week. So a glimmer of good news here, and certainly the reason why we had this correction in numbers was all apparently due to a technical error.
There was a technical error in the transfer of data from a lab to the health authority, which meant there were errors in reporting new cases between the 17th and the 24th of November.
So you take all the math that happened there, and it means that, yes, the cases overall in BC were up, but it was a more gradual way than maybe we saw and people worried about when they heard that high number that turned out to be false yesterday.
All right, so if the cases seem to be plateauing, what might that mean in the days ahead?
Well, it means that we could continue to see cases in the 700, 800, or 600 range. We're not seeing the rapid day after day growth that we did 1 or 2 weeks ago. But that doesn't mean we're out of the woods, especially when it comes to hospitalizations and tragically when it comes to deaths. And it's because there's a lagging effect when it comes to those two metrics. It takes about 2, 3, 4 weeks for someone who tests positive to go through the system to get to those points. And because we had such an increase, particularly in the number of people over the age of 70 who have contacted the virus over the past month, it means that those numbers will continue to rise. At least that's the prediction of Daniel Coombs, a UBC mathematician who works with the provincial government on modeling this disease.
The hospitalization numbers are going to lag. It's going to appear to be fairly significant at the moment. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see hospitalizations continue to rise for at least another couple of weeks before plateauing at a level which is above that level that we're seeing right now.
And what Coombs says and what Henry says is that it's important to not look at any one individual day, but week-long trends, because we can have spikes, as we seemed to yesterday, and it can make people think one thing about where we are on the trend lines, but you need to take the broader look to have a better understanding of where British Columbia is in this battle.
Justin, thank you. Justin McElroy reporting tonight.
Well, plenty of Canadians are spending more time working from home and less time on physical activity.
Now, a new study is warning about the consequences, but as Greg Rasmussen is finding out, there are some easy habits to aim for.
It's an up and down slog, a stair-climbing challenge called the Coquitlam Crunch.
I'll go rain or shine, and it's mostly rain, but an umbrella.
Getting in enough exercise as winter closes in might seem daunting, but
the hardest part about doing any exercise is starting. Once you're out here, it's a breeze. It's just hard to get off the couch. But once you get the first step off the couch, it's easy.
So what do you guys want to watch?
The new study says exercise is needed to counter all those increased hours spent on our backsides. Extensive sedentary time is linked to serious ill health and a heightened risk of early death. But 30 minutes of moderate physical activity per day lowers the risk. 44,000 people wearing fitness trackers were followed during the study, leading to the new recommendations with the goal of improving the fitness of people around the world.
Some is great, more is better.
This doctor says you don't have to work up a sweat, just move.
Walk the halls of your house. Walk from the kitchen to the living room and back and do that 10 times, and that's good.
Unsere Couch war die Front.
One COVID-related obstacle, government campaigns such as this German tongue-in-cheek ad glorifying couch potatoes. But too much couch time has a price, and staying apart without falling apart means Canadians need to figure out new ways to work in exercise after a day in front of the computer screen.
At the end of the day, which I'm going to do shortly, I'll go for a brisk walk with one of the kids. Just to be that kind of, right, the day is over and I'm consciously planning to integrate physical activity into my day.
The risk is pandemic-related couch potato syndrome. But this latest study is a reminder, one soggy step at a time can be the antidote. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Coquitlam.
Well, to the province's other health crisis now, BC is seeing yet another surge in overdose deaths. The daily averages last month paint a very somber picture. 5 British Columbians are dying every day from illicit drug overdoses. In October, 162 deaths were linked to drug toxicity and fentanyl. 80% were men between 30 and 59 years old. BC's chief coroner says the pandemic is making the street supply more toxic. More than 1,300 lives in total have been lost to overdoses province-wide this year.
I appeal to anybody who uses drugs to ensure you use with your own personal safety at heart. Don't use alone. Let somebody know. Talk to somebody. Use the app. Have your drugs checked.
An Abbotsford school is under investigation tonight after it gave students an assignment asking them to list the positive impacts of residential schools.
The assignment created an uproar online when a mother posted about it on social media. And she spoke to our Eva Yuguen-Senge about her push to hold the school district more accountable.
This is the homework that my daughter was sent home with in grade 6 from a school that is aware that she is Aboriginal.
Krista McInnes was furious when she saw her 11-year-old's homework from William A. Fraser Middle School. The assignment asked her daughter to list 5 positive stories from residential schools.
Can you name 5 positive things about Nazis and the concentration camps? Can you name 5 positive things about slavery? This is not okay.
McInnes took to social media to call out the assignment. The Abbotsford School District says it was made aware of it Wednesday morning. In a statement, Superintendent Kevin Godin says the school's principal has apologized to parents for the assignment. He says, "We know that this incident is not a reflection of our very skilled and talented teacher workforce. We are committed to ensuring that all materials provided to our students are culturally responsive and recognize our responsibility to alert educators to implicit bias, colorblindness, and racism."
I believe that it should be talked about that these residential schools were places where children didn't make it out alive. They were punished for speaking their own language. It's left mental scars on the people who did survive to a point where they won't even talk about it. They won't even speak on it.
BC's education minister also released a statement saying, "True reconciliation requires all of us to acknowledge the history and pain of this dark and shameful period in our history, which is now a critically important part of today's BC school curriculum. Any teachings that detract or dismiss the realities of residential schools have no place in our education system."
I mean, they're at a grade level where they can't even really understand the whole horrific events around residential schools to begin with. So it's definitely not appropriate or time to be trying to even shed any sort of positive light on this situation whatsoever.
She wants the district to take action to make sure this never happens again. Eva Yuguen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
The trial of Saudi activist and former Vancouver resident Lujain Al-Hathlul has been transferred from Saudi Arabia's criminal court to a court specializing in terrorism charges. It follows a rare last-minute court appearance today, a move her family is calling unexpected and disappointing.
I don't expect anything anymore. What I hope for is that because it has been transferred to another court, maybe it will be a bit faster and that the case will move forward and that they will finally admit that there's a lack of evidence and release her because of that. That's the only thing I can think of, because I have to be hopeful.
Al-Hathlul earned a degree from the University of British Columbia before being arrested in May of 2018, along with 9 other prominent women's rights activists. She was first accused of trying to destabilize the Saudi kingdom, but those allegations have been changed to communicating with foreign journalists and attempting to apply for a job at the United Nations. She says she's been subject to solitary confinement, torture, and sexual assault during her time in jail. Al-Hathlul has also been on an intermittent hunger strike since the summer, and her parents say she appeared very weak in court. The Saudi government says it's up to the courts to decide if she will be released or not. Since her detention, Al-Hathlul has received a number of human rights awards and was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, according to first-of-its-kind Canadian research, glaciers in BC's Columbia River Basin are much thicker than originally thought.
So does that mean we get to keep them for longer in a warming climate? Our Johanna Wagstaffe checked in with the researchers to find out.
Glaciers are an iconic part of Canadian heritage. And while we now know they're blinking out at an alarming rate because of climate change, there's still a lot we don't know about them. Apparently, how thick our glaciers actually are. But new research led by University of Northern British Columbia scientists found that the glaciers in Canada's Columbia River Basin are on average 38% thicker than previously believed.
So if you want to know how a glacier is flowing, you need to know how thick it is, because the thickness and the slope together control how glaciers flow down the mountainside. So originally, that's what we set out to look at. And then we compared them to some previous model estimates. And we weren't surprised that they differ, but we were surprised by how much they differed.
I mean, collecting data on our glaciers is not exactly the easiest feat. The team used ice-penetrating radar to measure ice thickness on 5 glaciers in BC's Columbia, and then combine that data with surveys for glaciers in the Rocky Mountains. And while you might think that more ice means they have more time to stick around, well, that's not necessarily the case.
Nice surprise to find out we have a little more ice to deal with, but the long-term fate is really has been sealed by us and greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things we do as glaciologists is much like meteorologists. We go out and we collect real observations. They allow us to better inform and improve models going forward.
At current rates of glacier mass loss for this region, studies show that glaciers will still disappear from the basin in about 65 to 80 years. Having more detailed observations about the dimensions of our precious but disappearing glaciers means more accurate models about these very important glacier cycles that we all rely on, whether we realize it or not.
Even studying like the glaciers Brian and I have been studying in the Columbia Mountains, it's remarkable how much they've changed just in the 6 years that I've been studying them. There are certain routes you can't take any longer. There's certain places you used to step on the glacier that now there's a 10 plus meter cliff that you'd have to rappel off to get down to the glacier. So there's, a lot of the changes are very visceral.
So rather than blinking out as we once thought, perhaps our Canadian glaciers are going out with a bang, so to speak. The more we know about them, the more we'll miss them. Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And Johanna Wagstaffe joins us live now with the forecast. But first, Joe, as we were hearing about that story, fascinating, by the way, Mike said, so what are they called, glaciologists? And turns out that is what they're called, similar to meteorologists almost.
Yes, and I actually found it quite interesting to think, after talking to the two scientists, to realize that our jobs are quite similar and that we need all of the observational data about what's happening now. Is it raining? How thick is the ice? There's such a connection, and all of that information is we put into our forecast model. So just like I forecast for the week ahead, they're forecasting for that melt and for those glacier cycles. I'm not going to start calling myself a glaciologist, but respect to those in the field. Speaking of snow and ice, I want to show you a picture from the top of Mount Seymour this morning. This is from Mike Hannafin, who took the Seymour main route up to the top to Brockton Point. And you need snowshoes up there. He wanted to move on to the first peak, but it was uncut, and he says it's very technical up there. And I'm not surprised. We have about 100 centimeters of snow on the top of most of our local mountains. In fact, Whistler, that base is now plus 70 centimeters, and most of the interior mountains as well, now at about 100 centimeter baseline. So we have been getting a lot of snow over the past few weeks. It is quite early. I know we had early talk of a La Nina, so far the trend is on. I will take you through clearing skies and a pretty decent weekend forecast coming up. But if you are heading out to the backcountry, definitely be prepared.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that, Johanna. We look forward to it. And a reminder, you can always watch this newscast live on CBC Gem.
Yes, CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Well, coming up, it's the eve of American Thanksgiving, cueing tremors of fear that holiday travel could send cases soaring again stateside. The latest urging from U.S. health officials next. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, with fitness classes canceled and gyms closed in Toronto, the city is taking some extra steps this year to make sure residents can get outside and keep active.
It's called the Winter Parks Plan. Nick Boisvert has details.
When her local YMCA shut down for the first time back in March, Jillian Mason started up a new walking group on her local trail in Scarborough.
It's meant that we've been outside, we've been getting our exercise, keeping our exercise up. We walk briskly, but also we are able to socialize with actual other human beings, not on Zoom.
This week, the trio is still at it, but they're moving a little more carefully.
Just the other day, I nearly took a spill, 3 steps in.
Like many of Toronto's multi-use trails, this one isn't normally maintained in the winter, but with gyms shut down once again, people say the city should rethink that approach. At Christy Pitts, an outdoor Tai Chi class echoed those calls.
With gyms closing, and who knows when they'll open up, we want our outdoor spaces to be more accessible.
Mayor John Tory says the city is on it.
I believe that with diligence on behalf of staff and members of the public, we can continue to offer safe recreation opportunities throughout the winter.
This afternoon, Tory announced the city's new Winter Parks Plan shaped by the pandemic. The changes include snow clearing on an extra 60 kilometers of paved trails, 60 parks with enhanced winter maintenance, and 143 public washrooms, double what the city normally keeps open. Toronto will also open its ice rinks this weekend with limited capacity. But it's not yet clear if the additional snow clearing will include the Meadowway.
Scarborough is sort of known to be underserviced in lots of different areas, and so this is a sort of a small investment for, a large part of the population.
The city says it is considering maintaining the trail this winter and expects a decision within a few weeks. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
And down under in Australia, they do Christmas a little differently, often with a barbecue down at the beach. This year, even in the midst of the global pandemic, that is likely to happen again as restrictions are eased in the country's 2 most populous states.
This is just such fantastic news.
The Premier of Queensland State was all smiles on word of successful control of the virus in the worst affected region of Victoria State over the past 25 days. That means people can resume domestic travel and businesses can fully reopen. Most Australians live in New South Wales State, and it too has shown reduced local transmission numbers over the past 3 weeks. Australia has reported 28,000 COVID-19 cases and 907 deaths since the pandemic began.
So perhaps some good news there. I'll throw a shrimp on the barbie, grab a tinny.
You didn't say it with the accent, but we'll give you a pass. We'll be back in a moment with more COVID-19 news from across the country.
CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day is going to look a bit different this year. but it's still in support of an important cause, local food banks across BC. Join us online and on Radio 1, December 4th.
Welcome back. Nova Scotia reported 16 new cases of COVID-19 today, and all of them are in the Halifax area. New restrictions take effect at midnight in the province, and that includes a ban on visitors to long-term care facilities. As Kayla Hounsell reports, Nova Scotia is also setting up rapid testing sites.
The next two people can come into the lobby.
By the time Dr. Lisa Barrett opened the doors of this pop-up rapid testing site, the wait was well underway.
We got here about an hour and a half ago.
How do you feel about that?
I'm cold. It's cold out, but I'm glad I'm not all the way at the end of the line. That's a long ways back.
It was indeed. The lineup wrapped around the building and multiple city blocks. It went on, and well, you get the idea.
Yeah, it's super long, but it's worth it.
Volunteers have stepped up to be trained to administer COVID-19 tests to people who have no symptoms.
Just want to make sure I'm negative, make sure I'm not getting anyone else sick, doing my part.
Nova Scotia Public Health says this kind of asymptomatic testing is critical as the Halifax area is experiencing a spike in cases.
We're keen to help the government understand how much virus is really in our community.
Yesterday, 604 people were tested at a pop-up rapid testing site like this one, and only one was positive.
And so that, to me, is a really big win. Each person that we find early and we're able to tell them that they're positive so that they can do the right thing and isolate, we have the ability to potentially divert hundreds of infections at a time.
Most of the cases in Halifax are among young people. The government is asking anyone who's been to a bar or restaurant after 10 p.m. to get tested, but not with a rapid test, which is less sensitive.
If you have a high suspicion that you've been in a place that has COVID directly, or you think you have symptoms, you need to get the gold standard lab-based test.
Asymptomatic rapid testing is just another tool to prevent the spread.
If it keeps everybody safe and can get us back in that bubble again, that'd be great.
And around here, getting back in that Atlantic bubble is the real gold standard. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
More protesters were at a restaurant outside of Toronto today, fighting against the provincial lockdown restrictions put in place there. The barbecue joint opened for the second straight day, defying public health orders. As Greg Ross reports, it has become the focal point for people opposed to the new measures.
They were louder and angrier.
We lost jobs, we have children to feed.
Most not wearing masks, but all seemingly there to support this man, Adam Skelly, who for the second straight day opened the doors to his restaurant, Adamson Barbecue, in defiance of both provincial and city rules.
Here to keep the media off the property.
While he had little to say to the media, with his lawyer by his side, he did plenty of talking to police and bylaw officers inside his restaurant this morning, shortly after opening up for business.
It was a very cordial discussion with both the owner as well as his legal team. At the end of the day, they all decided that he and the staff would leave and close down.
Police tell us that so far in 2 days, a total of 9 charges have been laid, 5 against Skelly and 4 more against the corporation that owns Adamson Barbecue. According to police, Skelly is the director of that corporation. The charges include hosting a large gathering, not having a business license, and allowing indoor dining.
For dining, I believe there is a maximum $10,000 fine for the individual, as well as a $100,000 fine for the corporation. Those fines also changed when we charge them for the illegal gathering.
This is a person who has gone out and deliberately flouted the law.
Today, the mayor vowed to take further action if Skelly tries to open his doors again tomorrow.
People who choose to flout the law, in my book, should have the book thrown at them, and should have every consequence that we can possibly muster.
While we're not entirely sure if Skelly will try to open up again tomorrow, there were others in the crowd who claimed to be small business owners who have been forced to close, and they claimed that they were going to be opening their businesses again tomorrow, despite COVID-19 regulations. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
To Saskatchewan now, where the Premier is self-isolating tonight as he awaits a COVID test result. Scott Moe tweaked some of the province's restrictions as well today, but as Bonnie Allen reports, the Premier is resisting pressure to go any further.
At 69 years old, Johanna usually spends his winters in Arizona, but unable to travel south, he's driving a taxi.
Most days I start at 5 o'clock in the morning and sometimes go till 8 o'clock at night.
That's 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. Long shifts, trying to eke out a living as fewer people demand his services.
I haven't taken many people to bars, but you know, I've taken them to the casino and restaurants.
He was worried additional restrictions would shut down businesses.
How far does it go?
Not as far as many were calling for.
Can you hear us, Premier?
Premier Scott Moe, in self-isolation awaiting a COVID test result, spoke by video conference.
We don't believe the solution is another wide-scale lockdown.
Moe resisted pressure from hundreds of medical professionals who had called for some shutdowns. Instead, he reduced capacity inside most businesses. For example, just 30 people inside casinos, down from 150. Moe insisting most businesses are operating safely.
So it would be terribly unfair, and it would have a huge negative impact to close down all of those businesses and put thousands of Saskatchewan people out of work.
The only thing suspended, team sports, blamed for fueling infections in schools and workplaces.
They were certainly more timid than I would have expected. We didn't come out of this press conference with a clear indication of what might trigger something more aggressive.
Already the virus has moved into long-term care homes, jails, and shelters. Kyle Gunderson had COVID-19.
Moe didn't even say, don't go out if you don't have to. He said, maybe don't go out if you don't have to. And I think that's the messaging that bothers me the most.
It's political, I would think.
Johanna is relieved the new measures are not tougher. He's not worried about his health. It's his shrinking pocketbook that scares him. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Regina.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden delivered a Thanksgiving address to Americans today. He called 2020 a tough year with a divisive election and a pandemic that has physically and emotionally drained many people. But he says the end is in sight, and this is the time to unite and tackle COVID-19.
I know the country has grown weary of the fight. We need to remember, we're at war with the virus, not with one another, not with each other. This is the moment where we need to steel our spines, redouble our efforts, and recommit ourselves to the fight. Let's remember, we're all in this together.
Biden acknowledged it's hard to give up traditions, but he called on Americans to stay home and celebrate Thanksgiving in small groups.
And that's where the U.S. stands heading into a potentially super spreading event, Thanksgiving. Today, millions of Americans are doing precisely what the CDC has pleaded with them not to do. Katie Simpson brings us the scene at a busy airport in Washington.
Taking the TSA on the other side of the world.
Millions of travelers are pressing ahead with holiday traditions, even as the country goes through its worst ever surge in new daily COVID cases.
So everything's been planned months and months before, so, you know, gotta go.
Honestly, I'd rather be there than here alone.
Travelers unfazed by the request from the Centers for Disease Control to put off plans this year.
Did you think twice about your trip when the CDC asked people to stay home for Thanksgiving?
No.
Why not?
It's none of their damn business.
The number of passengers in this airport is about half of what it typically would be for this time of year. Public health officials have been pleading with Americans to stay home, pointing to Canada's Thanksgiving experience in October as a warning.
They celebrate it much like we do, families around a table coming from all over in airports just like that. And they had an explosion of cases in Canada.
At least one new trend suggests some people are taking the warnings seriously.
They sold more turkeys this year than in past years, but smaller sizes.
Here you go, James.
Thank you so much.
James Irwin is going to a scaled-back dinner for 5.
We've been quarantining for 2 weeks. This is the first time I've been outside, and it's only to come pick up these groceries.
Another trend, Thanksgiving takeout dinner for 1.
Well, we've sold 80 orders, which is, for a small place like us, that's a lot of lobster.
It's been a struggle to keep this seafood bar open, and the head chef fears a post-holiday COVID spike is coming.
It just makes the road a lot longer until we get to the end of this. And it's extremely frustrating. It's very frustrating.
The sacrifices of some this holiday, those who chose to stay home, may not be enough to counter the indulgence of others mingling about. It will take about 2 weeks for the country to find out. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
As we reported earlier, COVID-19 cases are surging in the Fraser Health region. Just ahead, more on those calls for even tighter restrictions.
Canada could soon have a new national park. It would be in the part of the Queen Charlotte Islands known as South Moresby. A stop has been ordered to logging operations in the area until a decision on the park is made. That's angered people in the lumber industry who fear for their jobs, and they've let their fears be known to the Environment Minister. Karen Webb reports.
It was supposed to have been just a friendly visit with the new federal minister to see for himself what will become the next national park if he has his way. South Moresby in the Queen Charlotte Islands. Environmentalists say this area is unique, a moody, stunning archipelago of 138 islands, and the ancestral home of the Haida Indians. They say it should be preserved in its isolation, that more than 500,000 people want the federal government to save South Moresby from industry. The minister says yes, there will be a park. But where, how big, and what will be allowed to happen in or near it? Those questions have not been answered.
You either have a park or you don't, and if you do, you don't have logging or mining.
The big problem is logging. This part of the Charlottes has been logged for more than half a century. Now the people who have been forced to close down the last logging camp think what they want doesn't matter anymore to the politicians.
I myself honestly don't think it's fair for other people when you hear these environmentalists saying that they have 500,000 to 1 million names of people from all over the world. I just don't think that's fair. I mean, a lot of them people don't even know what they're talking about.
The whole thing is getting to be quite too much for everybody. You know, I wish they would make up their mind and give us an answer, whether it's yes or no, or what's going to happen.
So when Tom McMillan went to the town of Sandspit, he found out what happens to federal cabinet ministers when normally friendly townspeople feel their livelihoods are in danger.
No, I didn't say that. I think everybody here wants a park. I don't think there's a person here that doesn't want a park. But we still think that we should be able to extract the resource potential. We have lessons to learn.
This morning, McMillan met with his provincial counterpart, Austin Pelton, who also wants a park.
I, personally, am out to see that we get the greatest possible preservation of South Moresby. And I won't change.
The province actually owns the land, so any decision about a park must take place between two governments. Since both ministers want the park, what's left is to determine who wins and who loses, and how much it will cost the federal government. Karen Webb, CBC News in the Queen Charlotte Islands.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Sadly, in the last day, we have an additional 13 people who have died from COVID-19 here in British Columbia.
Those 13 deaths mark the highest one-day total for deaths in BC since the pandemic began. Dr. Henry also reporting 738 new cases of COVID-19. The number of people in hospital continues to set new records with yet another new high. 294 patients, 61 of whom are in critical care.
What about my 100-year father and my 95-year my mother, you know? They have no strong immune system.
A call for stricter measures now. Some community leaders in Fraser Health are urging the province to take more drastic action in their region, which is still the epicenter of our province's pandemic. They worry about the virus spreading between multi-generational households and are urging the BC government to implement a full lockdown to halt the chains of transmission.
Walk the halls of your house. Walk from the kitchen to the living room and back and do that 10 times, and that's good.
Keeping fit, or at least trying to, during a pandemic. A new study warns of the consequences of so much time spent at home. 44,000 people wearing fitness trackers were monitored for the research. It found physical activity, even just a little, every day can have significant benefits.
Well, much of our province's pandemic response focuses on one area.
Of BC's 738 new cases today, more than half came from the Fraser Health region.
The CBC's Briar Stewart takes a look at what's happening there and the devastating impact for at least one family.
This is not how Dave McIntosh envisioned his trip home from the hospital with his new son. He's joined by his sister as his wife Jillian is on a ventilator, fighting for her life.
They're doing everything they can in there, but you know, there's so much damage done to her lungs. We don't know. She might end up needing, you know, permanent care for the rest of her life.
Their son was born 2 weeks ago by an emergency C-section after his wife contracted COVID-19. She remains in a medically induced coma and has never seen her own son.
With no change in my wife, having this little bit of sunshine, you know, a little bit of happiness to add to what's going on right now. But we just want Jill to get better and start showing some improvements.
Jillian McIntosh is one of the more than 60 people in the ICU with COVID in BC, and today the province saw a record number of deaths.
Sadly, in the last day, we have an additional 13 people who have died from COVID-19 here in British Columbia.
The McIntoshes don't know where Jillian got the virus, but they live in the Fraser Health region where there's significant community transmission. But specific data beyond that isn't available.
So while we are hearing rumblings that, you know, a lot of it is coming out of particular areas, affecting particular communities, we don't know exactly why or how it's happening yet. And we don't have that data to help inform us.
The province has noted that transmission is happening in the South Asian community, but can't quantify it further because they aren't keeping race-based data. Public Health has been reaching out to different communities, but some believe the messages aren't clear enough.
Some of the health orders have been confusing or have mixed messages for even native English speakers. Then you can imagine for people for whom English is not their first language, there could be some miscommunication or mixed communication there.
When it comes to communication, there have been problems with BC's data collection over the past 9 days. Dr. Henry said a system error led to cases in Fraser Health being both underreported and overreported. The clarification meant that there'd been an additional 255 cases in the health region. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still to come tonight, a campaign to keep it local. With many businesses on the brink of devastation, a call to spend holiday dollars in your community. That story just ahead.
And at 6:42, you're looking at a live shot of the Port of Vancouver. Hope you enjoyed the dry day around the South Coast because showers are set to return tomorrow. Wait till you see, though, what's in store for the weekend. Johanna's full forecast is next.
The Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates.
Rebate.
Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
Welcome back. Retailers in one Toronto neighborhood have launched a campaign to highlight the importance of shopping local during the pandemic.
Tanya Ricci spoke to shoppers who are taking notice of the initiative.
The year is 2021, and these businesses along Queen West didn't make it.
We were totally worried. Some of our favorite places like Kennel Cafe, we saw that on their windows this morning, and we thought that they were gone.
That was the whole point of the Roncesvalles Not for Lease campaign, to paint a picture of what the future could look like if local shops aren't supported during these trying days of the pandemic.
We are asking our stores every month about, okay, how are things looking for you? How long can you last? And we're getting usually over 50% respondents saying, I've got weeks left, not months.
The BIA says the community has shown a lot of support, but still around half a dozen shops in Roncesvalles have already shut down, and others are in limbo. The owner of this tea shop says while she's been able to adapt and remain open, she worries for her neighbors deemed non-essential, as shops are closed once again during the citywide lockdown.
I think the fear is that the energy of the neighborhood will change, and that the community aspect of having a high street like this will impact the just the feeling of the neighborhood.
Even though these signs are hung up in Roncesvalles, those behind the campaign hope that this encourages people to shop local wherever they are.
We feel like it's a crisis that's happening across the city. That we have communities where this is unfortunately becoming the reality. People that live here, they employ people that live here, and they need the support of the government, and they also need the support of the local community.
The city says it's doing everything it can to help local businesses by promoting them, offering virtual support and grants. It says an extensive report that includes strategies to support the retail sector will be brought to a committee in 2021. But for now, businesses hope holiday shoppers don't forget them.
It's so much easier just to order on Amazon, but once you come and you see these people, you look into their in their livelihoods and everything, it's definitely just the right thing to do for sure.
They've bought all of their inventory, and I think most people, are ready to adapt and implement new systems.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Johanna Wagstaffe back now with the forecast. Hey, no monsoons today in our hood. It was kind of nice.
Yes, a nice little break from extreme wild weather. A nice little break between systems. So that was what brought us the sunshine and the glimmer on the mountains for a moment there. Let me take you through the current temperatures. It's chilly. There's a chillness to the air, a couple of degrees cooler at a 5 than we are sitting this time of the night the past couple of evenings. And that's with a clearer sky, letting any of the heat we saw today radiate away. The clouds actually help keep our heat locked in through the overnight. That cold front is coming. You can see it sliding down the northern coast, timing things out for the south coast. We do have a mainly cloudy and drizzly Thursday as that cold front heads into our neck of the woods. It sort of stalls out just before it gets into Metro Vancouver, so it's really just drizzle and shower through most of the day. It's around 4 p.m. that I think the front will actually begin to sweep through. But not a washout of a Thursday. Definitely not a blue sky day either, though. And the low pressure system sort of lingers in place through Friday. Here's the big picture. So that cold front bringing some fresh snow to both our coastal mountains and our Rockies and the Columbias. That low pressure system associated with it pushes up into Friday. So you can see we're sort of under the systems for the next couple of days, which is why we aren't getting the wettest of the weather. And in fact, high pressure then pushes it out of the way to Saturday and Sunday. So we never really get into the bulk of the wind and the rain associated with the systems. That is all happening up towards Prince Rupert. You can see a 7 for tomorrow with pretty steady rain, 3 in through Kamloops, and a 6 down towards Kelowna with sunshine for the southern interior and the Kootenays for one more day. Okay, getting you to the weekend forecast. Few showers Thursday and Friday, as I mentioned. milder overnight. A little bit of a push in temperatures for Friday and Saturday. Might even hit the double digits on Friday. Lots of sunshine for Saturday. That's as a high pressure builds in underneath that low pressure system. And I do think we'll stick with a mainly dry Sunday forecast. Increasing cloud because we will eventually get into the bulk of that system as we head into Monday. And the showers look to linger through most of Monday. I was looking at the long range trends though. And starting Tuesday of next week, we've been sort of waiting for this pattern for a while. Starting on Tuesday, we will get into some cold but clear air. And I know we could all use one of those weeks where the sun is shining, it's crisp out. Looks like that will start Tuesday and last through most of next week. But for now, have to get through a couple of soggy days. We'll be rewarded by a good weekend, and then we'll get the toques and mitts and scarves out. How does that sound?
We will hold our breath. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Johanna.
You're welcome.
Turning to some sad news now, Argentinian soccer legend Diego Maradona has died of a heart attack, prompting the country's government to declare 3 days of mourning.
Considered one of the greatest soccer players of all time, he became a household name during the 1986 World Cup.
Maradona still has it, lays it to Valdano. Maradona gets jumped and goal. Maradona put it in with his hand.
Yes, that was Maradona's so-called Hand of God goal against England, infamously allowed during that 1986 World Cup. He also scored a spectacular goal in that match, weaving past 7 opposing players. It would go on to be named the goal of the century.
Well, Maradona dealt with addiction over the course of his career. He was hospitalized twice for heart problems related to cocaine use. And just several weeks ago, he underwent emergency surgery for bleeding on the brain. Maradona died today at his home in Buenos Aires. He was just 60 years old.
Still ahead tonight, animal ambulance. A rescue team on the East Coast gets a new mobile medical unit for pets. We'll explain how it works coming up.
Since the spring, many Edmontonians have been getting outside and going for walks. It's led to some appreciating their neighborhood and exploring other areas. Eris Osborne is one of them. For her, historic homes and architectural details stand out.
I love the most probably walking in the mature neighborhood, and I just enjoy everything. I think some way it's because where I come from.
Originally from Hong Kong, Osborne grew up around tall, high-rise condo buildings. Single-family homes were rare. This year, she started taking pictures of residences in Edmonton, rough sketching them and painting them.
And then I started to do one in the Victorian Highland houses, and then starting on the whole series.
It's called YEG Old Houses. For the next 10 months, she's painting a dozen pieces, all focusing on different historic homes throughout the city. Her style is described as bold impressionist.
I will say that capture the soul of the architecture, and then interpret by my own feeling.
She's working in the studio of the historic McLuhan House, which was built in 1912. It's part of her Arts Habitat residency. She's also researching the homes she paints.
I just wanted to show that the houses can be, right, they can tell their own story as well, right? That can be a former owner, can be a new owner, they change it.
This home was painted by Osborne. It's only 20 years old, but she likes the Dutch-inspired style. The owner heard about it and bought it.
And then we'll have this painting of our new house. That's kind of like super, like someone's interpretation of what our house looks like to them.
Susan Whitford thinks it's a great project and can't wait to see more of the paintings.
It's good to see, someone's vision on something that, those of us that live in these historic neighborhoods, that's why we stay here. That's why we don't move far away.
As for Osborne, she plans to show her paintings at an exhibit in the fall of next year. Travis McEwen, CBC News, Edmonton.
It's very ecologically diverse. There's sort of rolling fields that have been used previously for hay. There's wetland, muskeg, forested areas. So there's so many different things that we can do out there, so many different activities. You know, if it was just one big field, it would still be amazing. But, you know, this varied topography, the diversity of the wildlife that's out there, you know, the lake is covered with birds. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do with land like that in place. We're really hoping to build this project with the communities that we work with, and with, you know, the folks and the organizations and the projects. You know, I don't think we're not interested in sort of being the main drivers of this. Like, I think we really see this more as a facilitation role, so that we can bring people out to get what they need out of it. And you know, whether that looks like Indigenous scientists doing, you know, prairie biome rewilding or water revitalization work, or it looks like community groups bringing youth out to do language camps or land-based learning. You know, like we're really open to what folks want to do out there.
CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day is going to look a bit different this year, but it's still in support of an important cause: local food banks across BC. Join us online and on Radio 1, December 4th.
Let's take you to the other coast now. And an animal rescue group on Prince Edward Island has a new set of wheels.
Yes, the emergency animal response team steps in when people and their animals need support after a disaster or emergency.
And now it has an ambulance to help it do its work better. Take a look.
My name is Ron McConnell. I am the current president and public information officer with the Emergency Animal Response Team here on PEI. We have currently about 40 volunteers across Prince Edward Island that responds to disasters and emergencies to help people that have been evacuated or displaced, and they have no way to take care of their animals. Our newest acquisition is the machine that I'm sitting in right now. It's a used ambulance. My wife was cruising Facebook and Kijiji and other sites, so she saw the ad come up that this company had a couple of these ambulances for sale, and the two of us just looked at each other and said, we have to go take a look at this. So a week later, we were driving it home. What we're going to do is we're going to turn it into a mobile command post and an emergency animal transport vehicle. We will also be able to provide a little bit of pet first aid if necessary, just very primary and basic first aid. But the biggest idea is to have it as a command post so that our volunteers can operate out of a single centralized unit and not be scattered all over the countryside. It's going to take some modifications. A lot of the stuff that was in it for humans has been taken out, but there is still a lot of equipment in here that we can use, and then we'll modify the inside to be more specific to what we need it for. I just want to thank the people of PEI. People have been so supportive of our group. As soon as they hear what it is that we do, they want to know how they can help. And I just want to thank everybody for that.
Good idea, not for, you know, emergency health calls, just emergencies, disasters.
That's right. I think my dog, as long as there's some treats in there, I'm sure yours is the same way.
Absolutely.
Wow, what a treat that would be for them.
Intimate. He's in.
You can always find our newscasts online. Just head to our website. We're at cbc.ca/BC.
Next local news right here with Dan Burrett at 11 after the National. Have a good night.
Night.